Hi everyone, Kristina here. Welcome to another card video at my YouTube channel and blog. Today I have two cards for you made using layered stencils. One card uses some stencils that are meant to be layered, and the other is my own personal combination of two different stencils. In fact, they're from two different companies. I'm going to be using some gold ink on these and also some gold accents, and I think it makes them have a really bold and striking design. This is the first card I'm working on. It has a black background with stenciling on top, and I love this argyle pattern that's created with some stencils from Newton's Nook. The black cardstock I'm using today is actually from Gina K Designs. This is the black onyx cardstock, and it's going to cover the entire front of my card. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this down to a card size. So it's 5.5 by 4 1/4. Like I mentioned before, I'm using some stencils from Newton's Nook. This is the Argyle stencil, and it's a set of two stencils that are meant to be layered on top of each other. I'm going to start with the diamond pattern, the full diamond pattern stencil first, to lay down some solid color. And I want to go completely off the edge of this cardstock, so I'm going to actually tape it from behind. I'm going to tape the cardstock to the stencil so that it doesn't move around as I add ink on top. And this makes it so that I don't have any areas of the front of the cardstock being covered by tape. So I'm going to go ahead and start stenciling. I'm using some peacock feathers distress oxide ink, and oxides are great on top of dark cardstock because it shows up. So oxide ink is a little bit like a hybrid pigment ink, and pigment inks don't soak into the paper and dye the paper underneath. That's why they're not called dye inks, they're called pigments, because the pigments sit up on top of the paper, and so the color isn't absorbed and you actually can get color on top of dark surfaces. So I'm really swirling this mini round blending tool with the peacock feathers distress oxide ink. I'm pressing that into the stencil. I want to make sure I get all those corners, and then I can lift up that stencil and I'm left with this cool diamond pattern. Doesn't quite look like it's argyle yet, just looks like a diamond pattern. And because I'm going to be putting some ink on top of this, I want to make sure it's dry. So I used my heat tool just to speed up the drying process. Oxide inks don't take quite as long as traditional pigment inks to dry, but they do take a little bit longer than dye inks. And I wanted to show you this stencil. It has this kind of faint cut of where the other diamonds should be. And that helps you line up the stencil on top so that everything is precise and perfect. So I did use those guides on the other stencil to make sure that I had it in the right spot. I'm now using some Enchanted Gold pigment ink from Altenew. This is one of their new ink pads that I think they've introduced in the last month or two. And I'm picking it up with the mini round blending tool and pressing it into these little dashed lines on this stencil. Now, this ink is very vibrant and very bright. The packaging looks suspiciously like Sukaneko Delicata ink, so I don't know if it's the same, just repackaged or not. All I know is this ink is pretty fabulous. It's pretty great. It's nice and juicy, and I get a really good result with this ink. And you'll be able to see in a couple applications in this video. In this first one, I've got it in very small sections, pressed and pushed into those small areas on the stencil, and then later I'll be showing it to you with stripes. So I love how vibrant this Enchanted Gold ink is on top. So here's the example of the stripes. I'm going to move on to the second card stenciling, and you'll notice that it looks like this gold ink is on top of the black flowers, although I did it the other way around. Using the wide stripe stencil from Pretty Pink Posh, and I'm going to tape it to some white cardstock this time. This cardstock is cut to a standard size card as well. Now this stencil is just not quite tall enough, like the stripes aren't tall enough to completely go from edge to edge. So because of that, I know that I will be cutting down this